And we're live. And this is Game Changers with me, Vicki Abelson. And my guest today is my friend Bennett Salvay. Yay.
Hey.
Hi, Bennett. I'm so glad.
Hi, Vicki.
Bennett, it's so crazy because we were going to do this
right before the pandemic.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you were traveling then. And
Yeah.
I was afraid to have you in my house because
I think I was in Nashville because I actually went to Nashville. I think everything shut down middle of March. And I think I was in Nashville like the first week of March, and we were going to go like the third week of March or something like that.
No, we were actually scheduled from March 11th.
Okay.
And what happened, and it wasn't quite the shutdown yet. The shutdown happened a couple of days later on
Friday.
Friday.
It did. Yeah, middle of March. Yeah.
But you had traveled, and Pete, who was running my camera, had traveled, and I was already scared. And so I put the ixnay on it, and Pete was like, what are you crazy? And literally 2 days later, they shut down the whole
And the rest is
country.
history. Yeah, the rest is history. But here we are.
So here we are. Tony, I want to tell you that Bennett was just complimenting the composite that you did of She's on the Show. And I just wanted that you.
Yeah. So, it was good research. So
the research I did, but Tony did the art. She's the eye, she's the visual. Yeah. So what did you have going on right before this? The people who watch this show, I call them we're called the COVID crazies. And because that's what we are. So what did you have cooking? What did you have to stop? What got put on hold, if anything? How did your life change?
Well, I'm trying to think. I was definitely working on some records and movies. Let's see. This was in March.
Right mid-March
2020. Yeah. So I did a movie that came out that I did the year before called Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice, which is a documentary.
Bennett, I got to tell you how brilliant, how much I loved that film. Excellent film.
It was great. And a colleague of mine, we've done a lot of projects together, Julian Raymond, who's a great songwriter, producer, composer. We scored that movie, and for James Keach was a producer. We've done a number of projects with James, and Jeffrey Friedman and Rob Epstein were the directors, or multi-Academy Award winners. They did a Harvey Milk documentary.
Oh, that was a great one too.
Yeah, they did the quilt, about the AIDS quilt. So they're like really fantastic team. So that was just a fantastic project to work on. And I've been a fan of Linda and a lot of the other people in that movie. So it was kind of a real fun, certain projects are just really like hard work and backbreaking. That one was really fun to do. And it was like, the music was cool and the score was cool, but it was also just fun to be part of it. And it was I was just a fan of the movie besides us scoring it. But what happened was, it's kind of a funny story. Linda Ronstadt's, I don't know Linda personally, but she's really smart. She's really sharp, and she's funny, and she's great. So anyway, she was reluctant to be in her own documentary. So they had all this archival.
Wait, was she reluctant, Bennett, because of the MS? Because
I think so, and I can't speak exactly for her, but I know she's reluctant. Mm-hmm. And so James Keach made a deal with Linda, which this is going to talk to what I was doing when the pandemic started.
Okay.
And Linda has a charity, essentially, she's very involved with, called Sundry, which is Sundry, hard to pronounce. It's a group in the Bay Area, the East Bay, and they teach a lot of like Mexican American kids about Mexican heritage, music. I think like 7,000 kids have already gone through there.
Wow.
And some of the kids are now like teachers there, and it's a great. So Linda said, okay, James, you want me to be in your movie? Do another movie about my project, because I want this to get out, and it ties into like immigration issues. It ties into and Linda, as you probably know, she has a real tie to traditional Mexican music. Her dad was from Mexico.
By the way, I went to school in Tucson, which is where Linda's from. I know her father's hardware store. Yeah.
And her mother was like a physicist that went,
oh wow,
she comes from and her dad was an incredible musician. People can watch the movie, but it goes into all her background. Anyway, this was near and dear to her. So James Keach made a deal. She made a deal. Okay, I'll be in your movie. And the end of that movie, I won't give it away, is an incredible, like, tear-jerking scene with Linda and her family. And she's in, a couple other spots. And she goes, I will do that, but you need to make a movie, another documentary about this group. And I'll be in that too. And we'll go to Mexico. And so basically that happened. So that movie really featured Linda, Jackson Browne, and this group, and so that was going on. Literally, I did the first scoring sessions in Nashville with kind of a small group when the pandemic, like right before the pandemic. So that's why I was in Nashville when I didn't see you. So we were doing some sessions for that movie. So I really, right when the pandemic came, I had a movie that was going on. So this, and it's called Linda and the Mockingbirds is the name of the movie. And it's been out on HBO Max, and it's
I'm
available.
writing that down. What's that one about?
Well, it's about this group. It's about,
you're talking about her other movie. Okay.
Yeah. Linda and the Mockingbirds.
Okay.
And Jackson Browne is in it, who's great. And I've had a chance to talk to at length a couple of times. He's a huge hero of mine as a songwriter growing up.
I was actually hugging Jackson Browne a week before he was diagnosed with COVID.
Wow. Well, hopefully you didn't get it.
No, I did not.
Yeah, I've been able to meet him a couple of times, and it was just kind of amazing because he's great in the movie, and he's so, I don't know, down to earth and humble. To me, it's like, oh my God, this guy is like an idol, a songwriter, and a big influence. And so it was kind of really a fun movie to do. It was a little smaller budget than than the Sound of My Voice movie, but it was really a cool movie. And so that's what I was working on. And that
was your part finished when?
No. Oh, no.
So what happened? How'd you finish it?
Well, there's a guitar player named George Deering, who's like a renowned
I know who he is.
Player. So George, he's got a great studio in his place. And, we do this a lot now. We send files, over the internet. And I love being in the room with players, but if you can't, this is the next best thing. So like, people worked on it remotely. We didn't really have like a live string group like I do in some movies, but George did a lot of stuff. I had a few other musicians that worked remotely. I had George come over to my place too. So
during the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, he I think early on, I was
going to say, this is before vaccinations.
Oh yeah, way before. I'm trying to think of the timing. But I have room in here. So, he definitely did quite a bit of stuff here. And so then the movie really wasn't finished till maybe that summer. So I had a project immediately, which was that movie. And I've had other, I just finished a movie called Bonded during that time. I've done some string arrangement stuff. I worked with some bands. So it's been kind of nice. Like it's been kind of fairly steady, but not crazy, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
had some kind of interesting projects. I actually had, this is kind of crazy. I had a #1 country song in the last few months that I did a string arrangement for, which is very controversial.
Why is that?
Well, it's by this guy, Aaron Lewis. And
what's it called?
It's called Am I the Only One?
Okay.
I think that's an, and it was kind of about statues, coming down. Like it was this very like kind of, it was all over the LA Times, and it did incredibly. It like shot.
Okay, wait. What made it controversial?
Well, I think because it was about like political correctness, or you can. I can't interpret the song for him, but it didn't mean like statues of Abraham Lincoln coming down, or did it mean Confederate? It doesn't say that, but I think it got a lot of like, and it's kind of cool. I mean, the only thing in the song was an acoustic guitar and strings. So I think he's pretty outspoken. So it was funny because people were saying, oh my God, but I kind of think everybody's got their own vision and right to do their own music. So it was kind of fun. Like it was like, oh wow, we just did a #1, country song,
That's really cool.
Yeah. So like it was literally, I wrote the arrangement and we wrote out the parts, and this isn't that long ago. Like this is a few months ago, and sent the parts to Nashville, and they recorded it like the next day. It was one of those quick things. It just came up.
Wow.
And I like doing that. It's kind of one of the things I like to do is, working with artists. So that was kind of a fun pandemic thing. And
what's interesting is that when I postponed us doing this March 11th, 2020, 18 months ago, you said, and then when I started up on Zoom about 6 weeks later, and I invited you, and you said, no, I'd rather wait till we can do it live, thinking that we would be live again any day, right? Whoever would have conceived. And now this has become the new normal.
Oh yeah.
I've done more interviews on Zoom than.
Oh, I do it all the time too. Like I just finished this movie that called Bonded that had a ton of music, like an hour and a half of music.
What's that? What's the log line for the movie?
It's a very, like, I think it's going to be really good. It's kind of a dark, serious movie. It's based on something that really happened in the mid 90s, where in downtown LA, well, actually El Monte, a suburb of Los Angeles, the LAPD raided a house that turned out it had 75 garment workers that were basically enslaved labor conditions.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So, and it was all over the news, the story. So Mo Ramchandani, who's the director and producer, wrote a movie that's loosely based on that. I don't want to, the movie's not out yet. So I don't want to give away too many details. Yeah. It was just changed. And the main protagonist is a kid from Mexico that was kind of, brought here by coyotes or by, human smugglers, to work in the garment business. So it's, and I actually worked with, it's a crazy long story, but I worked with Lisa Gerrard, who probably know, scored Gladiator and Michael Mann movies, and she's in Dead Can Dance, which is a fantastic band, fantastic vocalist. And she had started the movie and did some of it. And then they're really locked, she's Australian, so they're really locked down there. So I ended up kind of, the director asked me to come on board. So I ended up writing a lot of stuff. Lisa wrote stuff. I kind of did a lot of the final mixing, and I, worked with some of Lisa's stuff, but it was really chaotic, honestly. Like, it was pretty hard to work on that one during the pandemic because it was really.
Why is that?
Well, because first of all, there's a ton of music. It was a really complicated movie to do. And Lisa was in Australia, so we really couldn't get together physically.
Right.
It would have been something that would have been good to do that. And in fact, the final cue in the movie, there's a big, long emotional cue. And up to that point, I had used some of Lisa's stuff where she's sang, and I kind of, even her stuff, I kind of use her vocal in other spots and move stuff around when I use her stuff. But I really needed her to be on this cue and put her, some new vocals and new ideas on top of some things that I did, which was mix some of her. So she actually sang it in Australia, and it was only like one weekend they were open. She could have an engineer come over and record her. Like, it was really.
Oh, right. Australia was very strict about the lockdown.
Very strict.
Yes,
yes. So she lives in a town not far from Melbourne, like in the mountains. I don't remember the name, but so it was kind of, I was nervous doing it a little bit because we weren't in the same country. We weren't in the same room. And I kind of had to send.
You weren't in the same continent.
We weren't in the same continent. And she ended up loving the piece, and she did an amazing job, and she's amazing. So
that's fabulous.
But we had a lot of Zoom, like with the director at times, the post-productions in Mexico City, a lot of it. I mean, the movie's still going on. We're done with the music, but so that one was tough because it was way more music than any of those other movies I mentioned.
Right.
And it was very kind of intense movie and project. Really, really a good one. But and we had to do string dates. So I did a string date at Henson, which used to be A&M, and we socially distanced, players. And and the director really wanted a children's choir, but the reality is there's no way I can get a children's choir with 20-something kids in the same room on microphones.
Right.
And he was like, "Well, how can we do a children's choir?" I said, "Mo, there's no way you can do this." So I ended up getting finding another way to do it with this singer who had kids that were really good singers, and he knew somebody else that had kids, and he brought them in separately at different times, and it worked great.
Wow.
And Lisa, so we just found a way to do it.
That's okay. The adaptability. That was my next question. Do you, I'm thinking this makes it so much easier. There are so many people that I wasn't able to interview for years because they weren't in LA. And I was always in my living room with people next to me or in a studio. I'm thinking that moving forward, I'm always going to have Zoom. I mean, I hope to do some live stuff, but I'm always going to use Zoom now. Do you think this is a new way that projects are going to get done more efficiently, less expensively? Do you think that, or do you think it's going to go back?
I think there's a place for it, but I don't think it's a replacement completely.
No, I don't think it's a replacement either.
I think it's an added tool because like, I know some movies really had to record all the musicians separate and, when it was really locked down. And there's something about going into even on I've worked on movies, the biggest with like 90 players, like,
wow.
And, even on this movie, it wasn't that big of a budget, but we had 20 string players. And just having everybody in the room together, it just has a different sound.
And it has a different feeling too. And the magic that happens. Yes, the magic.
And even, it would have been nice to come and do your podcast in person if it wasn't, these times.
Right.
So, but I do think I do work. I've recorded scores in Europe. I work, Nashville a decent amount of time. I have colleagues there. I have colleagues in other areas. So it is a great way, even when you say you send files, to people.
Right.
Like, it's just a good way it's an added tool to communicate. That's pretty easy.
Absolutely.
So I think
even if it's just meetings in preparation, it just makes it the traffic in LA to just avoid that. Forget the plane.
Yeah. And that part's kind of great because I had a meeting recently with the head of music for one of the Disney divisions and like, it's kind of cool. Like instead of like, okay, if I have to drive in LA and go and get on a lot, there's times that it makes sense to do that. But for this kind of thing, it was just a general meeting and this person, knew my music and wanted to talk and wanted to consider me for other projects. It was like a perfect way to do it because it was more of a general meeting and touching base. And, it was like an hour meeting, with him, the whole, and you know what? Somebody from the department was in Costa Rica. Somebody was at their house in Santa Monica. So, like people were, somebody was in New York. So I think for that, it's really cool actually that you can,
I agree.
Have meetings like that. But I do like having players. If I have a choice, I love having players in the same room.
Okay, so speaking of having players in the same room, you're a player, you're in the room, you're in your room, but you have a keyboard in front of you. Can you give us a little taste of something from that Linda Ronstadt documentary?
Yeah, so there's kind of a big story to this I can get into, but when I did the Linda documentary, I'd come off, I had a pretty bad accident. Literally the anniversary of my accident was 3 years ago.
Okay, let's go there because it has to do with this story you're going to tell.
Okay. So it's funny. It's the anniversary, the 3-year anniversary yesterday. I do a lot of boating. I've had boats most of my life. And it was one of those things. I was on my boat. It was 7:15 in the morning, Santa Cruz Island, about 30 miles off of Oxnard Harbor. And
what were you fishing for?
White sea bass, yellowtail. And I'm very experienced. I've had boats over 30 years, and it was just one of those fluky things. I had on gloves, and there's something called a windlass, which is a really powerful motor with a cylinder. It's called the capstan, and that's how you bring up your anchor. So the anchor has rope and chain.
Right.
And I had, interestingly, had a jogging injury where I fell, and my pinky in my other hand, this is my pinky I still have. I don't have my other one, but it was kind of bent. I had a tendon thing. So I had,
so you're not doing that. That's the way it sits.
No. This one's fine. This is how my left hand, I'm actually missing that finger now. So I can't show you my left hand, but I had gloves on and they were sticking out. I couldn't put it all the way in my hand. And I said to myself, I'm just going to get the anchor myself. I'm not going to wake up the other guys. And just weirdly, the end of this glove somehow got caught in this rope, and my hand got pulled into this cylinder. And it was, I don't want to gross people out, but it was I got pinned and I got stuck, and I could hear every bone in my, arm, and, I hear all this stuff happening. So I had gloves, I had a jacket, and I was about 30 seconds away from being dead and my hand coming off. And I screamed and I kicked part of the boat because these other 2 guys were sleeping. One guy had earphones and didn't hear me, and one guy heard me, and he switched it off. So basically in 20 seconds though, I couldn't see it. And I was it was really one of those, you hear people talk about it, a near-death experience, your life flashes before. I mean, it really was like that, because
Wow.
I was thinking of my family and, this is it, like, because I couldn't get out of it. I couldn't turn the switch off because I was tethered. I was stuck, in this thing.
God.
So when he turned it off, my friend,
Oh my God.
and I was so relieved. I was so relieved that people asked me that. I was like, because I mean, basically it was very serious. Like I was in the hospital for 8 nights. Like they did extensive surgeries, but I was so relieved. I didn't feel pain, and I lost a couple fingers. I almost lost a third finger they saved. I had bones sticking out of my arm. It was just a crazy thing. So,
oh, your arm was broken as well. It wasn't just your hand.
oh, my forearm. Yeah. My radius was like 5 inches outside my arm. I mean, I couldn't, I had a jacket, so I didn't look, but we did a tourniquet on the boat. We called the Coast Guard.
Yeah. So how did they get to, how fast did all of that happen?
Like I was somehow like people say maybe I was in shock. I don't know if it's maybe, but I was in survival mode, if that makes sense. Like
yes,
I was like directing, okay, this is what we're going to do. So we called the Coast Guard. This is kind of an incredible story. I mean, I want to take
you were orchestrating the
I was orchestrating. I was being the conductor.
You were conducting.
So I go call the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard in the United States is amazing. If you have a problem, they are unbelievable. So they immediately get on this really fast boat. They head out. We start heading in. And we did a tourniquet for a couple of minutes, but then I knew I wasn't going to bleed out. I could tell, like, I said, okay, I'm going to survive. I'm not like I didn't look at it. I couldn't see it. I knew it was good to keep the glove on. So I came, so the Coast Guard came out, and I told the Coast Guard, like, I didn't tell him myself because I was kind of resting. I said, I told the guy running the boat, I said, tell the Coast Guard to call Dr. Glenn Cohen in Westlake, because I knew a hand surgeon. That was his name. And I didn't know if they'd get him, it's 8 a.m, but I knew I needed somebody. So anyway,
you knew a hand surgeon just like this.
Yeah. Crazy story. So Coast Guard takes me in, there's an ambulance waiting, they take me to emergency room. I called Dr. Cohen. He goes, get the fuck out of there right now. You got to go see this guy at USC Keck, Stavanovich. He's one of the best hand surgeons in the world. You need a trauma team. You need like 6 surgeons. You've got to get there, get out where you are. You'll lose your hand, just by knowing what happened.
Right.
So he had called Stavanovich. He was a resident with this guy. This guy is insanely brilliant, great guy. He has a protege, Dr. Lefebvre, who's unbelievable, who I still text with to this day. So they got me there the same day.
They
were going to helicopter me, but they didn't have a helicopter. So it was the middle of the day by then. They just got an ambulance, took me to SC Keck. A couple doctors came in. There's a plastic surgeon. There was a.
Meanwhile, are you still in the glove at this point?
Well, I had ice. The only thing they did in the ER was they gave me a tetanus shot. They did X-rays, which are hilarious because there's fingers all over, So they.
Oh my God.
They take me. Okay, I don't want to get too much because I'm talking about music, but by 3 o'clock, they were taking me in to surgery. I woke up at 10 at night, and the way the anesthesia is now, like I felt good. But anyway, they said, the doctor Lefebvre was actually crying with my wife. Like she goes, this is very serious, but they did a freaking amazing job. So, and they saved my third finger, which gives me, I think, the ability really to play. And they had hot air on it for 200 hours in the hospital. They had something called the body hugger, because there was no blood flow. My hand was crushed. So it was an incredible story. I had 2 years of therapy every week at the hospital. And, I go on the boat, I go fishing.
Wow.
I've done several projects. I play golf. I play golf one-handed, just my right arm, but I'm pretty good still. Like I'm only 5 strokes worse. So yeah, I mean,
I'm only 5 strokes worse.
But I mean, I had the best, I get really emotional talking about it, but my doctors, I mean, Dr. Lefebvre, we texted all the time. I mean, when I got home, anytime I had an issue, I would text her, I would send her pictures because my hand was huge still. I had, for a few months, I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't even do really therapy because of all the broken bones. And
did you think then, Bennett, did Did you think when it happened, when you just got out of, did you think, oh, I'm going to play again? I'm going to play golf again. I'm going to fish again. Did you?
I was motivated. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know if I
Mhm.
really want an honest answer. I
Mhm.
for sure. But, people ask me that all the time. They say, okay, admit it to me. You were just really depressed. And I said, no, I swear to you, I wasn't, because when I got in the hands of the doctors and I felt okay, and my wife was sleeping at the hospital every night and my kids came, and I said, listen, I could have had a brain injury. I could not be able to walk. My brain is completely fine. So I can
Thank
compose
God.
music because I've got that.
Yes. Mhm.
I can walk, who knows how my hand is, what's going to happen, but I'm in the best hands I can be, no pun, but I had an incredible, Amy Aguilon's her name. She's an incredible occupational therapist that does trauma at the hospital. 2 years straight, I saw her. So,
When did you start being able to use your hand?
well, so for a few months, there's so many broken bones, I couldn't really, and they said it. And then this happened in October. I'd say
Because I saw you play with the Babylon Social Club not that long after this.
well,
It
I
feels
did,
like.
my left hand was kind of messed up, but I definitely in January, I could start doing the therapy a little more seriously, because bones heal in about 3 months.
Mhm.
And, I started to play with one hand, then I started to use one finger in the left hand. It just, even golf, like, I didn't know if I could play golf, honestly, but I started putting with one hand and I started chipping, and I tried to hit it 50 yards and I could kind of do it. It's just kind of all evolved. So to answer your question, I know it's hard to believe it. I really wasn't depressed. I was just happy that I could start. I really do everything that I did. And I was just very grateful, to be able to, look what I did since then. I've done like
Bennett, I think
3
that's
movies.
why you've been able to do what you've done. I think the fact that you didn't go down the rabbit hole and you did stay grateful, because gratitude is everything. Well, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And, I've seen people with all kinds of problems and they lose their mental faculty, or they lose all kinds of things. So I knew however bad it was just my left hand and forearm. And I was also felt like I was in good hands. So I had a chance,
Right.
but even the doctors don't know exactly how it's going to go. So apparently I was like a really good case and a really good outcome. And,
So
I was
now,
very motivated, to do all these things, as you say.
and absolutely. And having had this experience and then working on this documentary on Linda Ronstadt, who is going through her own struggles
Right.
with
Parkinson's. Yeah.
so was it ever more poignant? Does she know about you?
I don't know. It's possible because I didn't work with her directly. I worked with
Right.
the directors and with James Keach. But so the story relating to piano was when we scored that and
When
wrote
did you score it?
Well, I'm trying to think, because the movie came out.
I feel like I saw it about a year ago, right?
Yeah, it came out theatrically towards the end of 2019, maybe September. Like it was I went to a premiere in New York, and it was in theaters, and then it was on CNN starting January of 2020.
That's when I saw it. Yeah.
So I think I scored it. It really wasn't. It was probably like April of 20. I'm trying to think of the pandemic and all that, how we did it.
No, if it came out in 2019, you couldn't have scored it in 20.
No, it was in 19.
Right.
But oh, right, because the pandemic was in 20. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did it like April, May. So I'd been like 7 months after my.
Wow.
And I wrote a piece of music for it that was a gospel piano piece, which was kind of a big towards the end of the movie. And Linda didn't really want to dwell on the Parkinson's. It was really like a retrospective of her career and musically based on her book. But it had to be in the movie. It was just part of who she is now. And we had to have her now and be part of it. So I wrote a kind of a gospel piano piece based that was under her talking about the Parkinson's. And because I wanted to be kind of spiritual. And so to answer your question, like I'm sure what I went through kind of influenced me, what I wrote to some degree. And but I went into Sunset Sound in the studio with this like these incredible musicians, and I played it live, recording. So it was like a big, because when I'm in my studio and I can have MIDI and play, it's pretty easy to do that. But I had to play live acoustic piano, so it was kind of a big deal for me to be able to play with the group and be part of the band, and I kind of pulled it off.
Can you
so I'll show
us...
you that little bit of the piece. I'm not gonna play the whole
Yeah.
thing. Let me,
Okay, yeah.
hold on, I gotta warm up my keyboard for a sec. It's got to refresh.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a big thing for me personally.
Was that the first professional playing you have done?
Yeah, like in terms of live in a studio or with like other players. I've been working on the movie and writing and stuff. But let me see if I'm okay. So it was this gospel piece that kind of went. So she's talking into this.
It's beautiful. Now it's going to make me cry.
And then like little guitar comes in. Because I didn't want it to be sappy and stringy. I want it to be kind of. So this is the first thing I played in the studio.
Wow. It's beautiful.
Anyway, so it goes on like that.
How do you compensate for not having two fingers?
Well, so this is an interesting thing because I may now even look at a prosthetic possibly to get, because I'm compensating because I have this finger, which I was going to lose, and I have a pretty good stretch, like almost an octave, really. I'm playing an octave right now with my thumb.
You're kidding.
I know, I have really good stretch. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm playing it right now. That's what I'm doing. Now, I used to be able to play a tenth. I used to be able to play bigger intervals. So there's certain things, like more complex things like that. But there's so many great players anyway when I need it. But I can jump, I have a pedal, I mean, it's a lot of bass notes, so, and also in a band thing, you have a bass player. And if I'm doing something scoring wise, I can overdub, here. So I can kind of do it. I mean, there's certain things I wouldn't play now that I used to play. So, but think of all that I can do. That's sort of what is my thing.
I like that focus. I like that focus on what you can. I think that's
I was
great.
a little nervous, which I normally am not, but it was my first time with all these people, and they're all my friends, the players, all these great guys. But
right,
it was like, okay, I got to play this live and be in time, and the directors are here, the producers are here, like
yeah, that's pressure.
do this like a session, like I used to do. So it was just kind of cool that I could do it. And that gave me a lot of confidence moving forward. So
it's miraculous as well. It should. So Bennett, before we get to more projects, let's go back and find out how you started doing all this when you were like so was your family musical? When did music start for you, and how?
Nobody was a professional musician in my immediate family.
Where'd you grow up?
Los Angeles. I mean, Beverly Wood, over the hill till I was 7. And then my parents built a house in the San Fernando Valley. And there were houses, but there were a lot of like fields and stuff like that. So moved there in the mid 60s when I was a kid, in second grade, I think, before second grade. I had an uncle, well, kind of a distant cousin who was a professor at San Diego State of music and played saxophone. But I mean, my dad loved music. I mean, he had a huge opera collection, huge classical music collection, loved listening to music, but I took piano lessons when I was young, like 7, 8.
Did you take it because your parents thought you should take it?
Yes.
Yes.
I did. And I didn't love practicing. I wasn't very good about that. And I was pretty good, but I kind of lost interest. And then this is going way back. So then when I was 12 or 13, I just started sitting down at the keyboard and working stuff out by ear. I guess I always like kind of heard music in a way, and I loved harmony, and I liked, as I became a teenager, I loved jazz. I
was just going to ask you what music spoke to you.
Yeah. I mean, I studied a lot of classical scores later, and my dad always had opera on and classical music, but I really loved, I mean, all kinds of jazz artists, and I really love complex harmonies, and some of the old time, you know, Bill Evans, the piano player, Oscar Peterson, even like Billie Holiday for a young person, like Ella Fitzgerald, you know, her vocals, and some of the guys that were younger then, like Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, Miles Davis. I listened to that stuff a lot. Keith Jarrett was really incredible.
You were listening to that stuff when you were a young teenager?
Yeah.
That's very sophisticated music.
Yeah, I just really loved it. I just really loved that kind of harmony. And even a friend of mine, good friend of mine in New York, reminded me, we went to see Keith Jarrett when we were in high school at Royce Hall at UCLA. I mean, I liked other stuff too. I went to James Taylor when I was 14, the Hollywood Bowl. I like rock and roll. I like the Faces. I saw Rod Stewart. My parents were like, drove me to the Hollywood Bowl for that. I always had a eclectic taste in music my whole life. I always have, but I loved jazz improv. I mean, Keith Jarrett would do concerts. He didn't know what he was going to play. He would just come and improvise, you know, for 2 hours or however long. So I would kind of do my own version of that. Obviously not to the skill level that they had, but I started writing songs and I loved improvising. So that's really what got me into music, was just, and I also met this guitar player named John Woodhead, who's an incredible player. He was playing in high school with like Leon Russell.
Wow.
Like John Stewart, you know, great folk artist. I mean, he was incredible player. So that was a big influence too. And he had a band, and he, like, definitely at that time, like, he was way better than me. So it kind of helped me be a better player, because I was in bands with him. And there's a great jazz guitarist, you might know, Paul Brown. Yeah, he was the head of Warner's like jazz label for a long time. He's a great player. He's a lot of his own records. He produced George Benson, all kinds of people. And he was in our band for a while. So there was a lot of good musicians around. So I feel like I kind of elevated me to be around them.
How was the dream to be a professional musician? What was the dream?
Yeah, I mean, my parents never would have wanted me to do that, you know, but
Right.
I just loved music. I mean, I just loved music. And
were you continuing to study music? Did you study music?
I did. You know, it's funny. I studied from a really great jazz. I played woodwinds then. I played saxophone and flutes. And, you know, there's a guy named Don Raffel I studied with. There's a guy named Charlie Shoemake. You might, if you know, like, he's an incredible vibe player. He taught a lot of really well-known jazz players like Ted Nash, who's New York. Randy Kerber, this keyboard player, is incredible. So I studied a lot of jazz theory with him. So I was studying it. And then what
was the dream? What end did you hope to get to?
I think, well, I was writing songs. So I think to make it in a big band, probably then was kind of the dream. Really, scoring wasn't really on the radar, because I knew what it was, but it really wasn't on my radar.
Well, we'll talk about how that happened.
Yeah. So basically then,
and did you go to university? Did you go to college?
UCLA. I went to UCLA.
And what did you study there?
Well, I studied history. I took some music classes, but, and also one thing I did when I was at UCLA, a group of us from this band, we ended up getting hired to play with this British blues artist named Long John Baldry. And Baldry was really big in Canada. So I toured in Canada. I mean, wasn't old enough to drink or anything. I was like, literally after my freshman year at UCLA, I went for the summer and took a quarter off. I was 19. And so he had a hit called "Don't Lay No Boogie Woogie" and the King of Rock and Roll, if you ever heard that. And I can't play this because of my left hand, but so it was this whole boogie woogie thing. So I played keyboards with him. So that was kind of my first like professional, besides the bands we were in. We were signed to William Morris in a production.
Oh, wow.
We did some stuff like that.
Like what was that original? What were those original?
Well,
bands
there's one
like?
called Sundance. we had different names. We were Heart for a while, but then the other Heart came out, so we couldn't be Heart. It was different configuration. So,
and were you playing jazz?
No. These were all like rock bands, pop
Okay,
bands.
that's what I thought.
I'm saying jazz was just my personal
Gotcha.
motivation, I think, for getting, I love jazz, but no, these were like somewhat blues influence, some, to some degree. I mean, people kind of compared us to the California sound, some of it, like, I'm trying to think. A little bit tied to like what Jackson Browne would do or something, not exactly, but a little bit more rock or a little bit, but some of the bands like that. I mean, I love Joni Mitchell, who was, of course, had a lot of all kinds of influences, right? Jazz, pop, so we had some stuff going, but we never really, made it, quote unquote. And so I was going to UCLA, but that gave me this background, which I can tell you how I got into the business, which is very serendipitous, which was,
before we get to that, how are your parents feeling about your passion for music? And are you getting a history degree because they've pressed you to like have something to fall back on?
I wanted to go, I did want to go to college, but no, they definitely wanted me to initially they just didn't think I could make a living in music, from their standpoint. They never really stopped me. They didn't discourage me from playing. In fact, we had band practices in my house. And so I wouldn't say that, but I think they were concerned about it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I definitely expected me to go to college, and I was a good student and stuff. So, but I was pretty heavily involved in music, even when I was going to school and playing gigs and recording and doing demos, and had this William Morris deal and stuff. So, and then, so what happened was I had a friend, her name is Penny Lee Hallen, and she happens to be Gary Marshall's.
That's who Cindy mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cindy's friends with Ronnie Hallen, who's Penny's mom. Yeah. So anyway, back then it was really different. She was working at Paramount, and she was the production assistant on this before the show wasn't even on the air yet, called Mork and Mindy, which of course launched Robin Williams. And the way it worked, it was really loose, and this changed, but she went on to a different job, like as dialogue coach, say. And she said, hey, do you want to do this job for the summer? You can be production assistant. I mean, it used to be called gopher back then, or so, you'd be the one that did whatever they needed, and was like hardly any money, like $150 a week. And I didn't, thought, oh, sounds fun. I didn't know anything about it. So that was, I started the summer of 78. I wasn't even 21, and I had to buy beer for one of our producers. And I always was scared shitless to go to the liquor store that they'd card me, because I didn't, I wasn't 21 yet. So I started there, and I was in these bands, and there's a guy named Jim O'Keefe, who was one of the associate producers, and he kind of knew my music, and people would come to my gigs, and we were good. So he knew I was like new music, and just, this is like crazy. Within I decided to not go back to UCLA, even though I only had like a year and a quarter left, because I said, wow, this is pretty cool. And then Robin Williams took off, and I was hanging out. I was doing songs with him, and and we had our band warming up the show, and we were doing blues stuff with him. He played with us every week. And that was an incredibly fun, that was one of the funnest shows I ever did in my life, by the way. But, so I met all these people, and I was on the lot, and I met people, because I have to run around, and I have to drive scripts to actors and get contracts signed. And I got to read, contracts and see all this stuff, because I was just like this young guy that was like, oh, take this, copy this, do that. So I thought, this is probably a pretty good place to be. And within 4 months, I was hired as being this pretty big job, which is music coordinator for all of Gary Marshall shows, which is crazy.
How the hell did that happen?
Well, they were really fans, like Ronnie Hallen. I mean, I knew Gary, but I didn't know Gary that well, but Ronnie and these producers really loved, I was in original bands. They'd come to our gigs. They knew I knew music, and they needed somebody, the person who was doing that job, who ended up being like a very successful director and producer named Rich Carell, who was one of the creators of Hannah Montana, did a bunch of stuff. He went on to do another job. He wanted to be an associate producer and do that. So that he was doing that job. It opened up, and they offered me the job. So it was crazy. So, and I had to supervise.
So you went from being a gopher
right
to being a music coordinator.
Right. And my job was pretty big because Laverne and Shirley had talent shows all the time. Happy Days had band stuff. And I was literally supposed to be in charge. I have to go to the studio, supervise sessions. I did arrangements.
Did you know what you were doing when you were doing this?
Well,
job?
I mean, I knew what I was doing with music kind of, but I mean, it was, I produced like even Anson Williams. I produced Anson sessions, for Happy Days. I did.
I'm calling Anson as soon as we get off the air.
Yeah. I mean, I did. So I was in there, this kid, I mean, to think of it now, I mean, I was 21 basically, and
that's just great. That is great. And he must not have been about the same age or close to
he was
it.
a little older. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot, but but we so I played in Lenny and the Squigtones a lot of time. That's how I met Snuffy Walden. We've done a lot of stuff together and the band together. And I know I just kind of grew into the job. I mean, I'm sure I was really nervous when I first had to supervise sessions and stuff. And some of the older composers, like they didn't imagine having this 21-year-old who, and there were times I was supposed to keep in charge of the budgets and the money and not let things go overtime. And there was times I knew they were going to throw a certain scene out. So I'd have to, I'm not going to say what it is, but somebody was really pissed at me because I said, well, we can't record that because the scene's out. And he was like, well, I wrote it, but I knew we couldn't go overtime to do, so I had to kind of learn to assert myself in that job and deal with politics and the studio versus Gary Marshall. I mean, Gary wanted somebody on his side to look over all this stuff. That's basically who hired me. So, and I met all these people that eventually, Tom Miller and Miller Boyette ended up hiring me to do like a
Gary's gave a lot of people their break. He gave Cindy Beagle her break. Yeah. Gary came in my living room when he had his book and read to a
that's great
room full of women. He was amazing.
Yeah. But, yeah. And so, Gary,
do you think he did that because he liked you and he wanted
I think, like I said, there were some other people like his sister, Ronnie Hallen, I think knew my abilities more musically, but until he passed away, I mean, I would see Gary, not a lot, but I'd see him at the baseball game. I'd run into him. He wanted to direct a music video with a band I was in, which stupidly the label, wouldn't let him do it. I mean, we were in contact, over the years, like we never really completely lost contact, and I still haven't with the family. And, I just talked to Ronnie a few months ago. So it was like a family thing. I don't know if he promotes that, but he really was. And he, I think they did. I think they thought I had some talent, but I mean, I can't even explain it, but I know there were a lot of young people around then, and it was, you could not get a production assistant job. The next year or two, it all shut down because then you had to be, you had to know the president of Paramount to get those jobs, or you had to, nobody could just get it that way.
Right.
Get a foot in the door. It became so unbelievably political. So I just got a foot in the door and kind of stayed. And then that evolved into writing theme songs on spec. And then I got some of that. I started doing my own arrangements instead of supervising other people. And it just kind of evolved from there.
Wow. So how did it evolve from being a music coordinator to composing? How did that jump happen?
So there were pilots for Gary. So I did a spec theme on something called Mean Jeans, which was Rob Lowe's first show, I think.
Oh, wow.
His first pilot. He was from Florida. He was like a teenager. And we got Sister Sledge, who had done We Are Family. They were huge then. We Are Family.
Oh, hell yeah, I know.
So they sang that, and Joel Sill was running the music department then. So he got them, and I produced it and wrote the song with another colleague of mine. So I started getting songs in pilots, and a lot of pilots don't go or shows, but I actually scored Happy Days. I scored, towards the very end. I did some episodes. I did some Laverne and Shirley episodes.
Well, what's the first television show that what was your
first
scoring gig? Yeah.
It was either, because to be really honest, it's so long ago. I think I did the famous Jump the Shark Happy Days.
No,
episode.
you didn't.
I think I did. because it was at the end of Happy Days I started scoring them, and I remember like Henry Winkler and Malibu, and
What a
I
place
think
to
I did.
start.
I shouldn't say that because I should check it out, but
That's funny.
I definitely was at least involved in it, or supervised it, but I think I might have even done it.
Wow.
But I did the show called The New Odd Couple,
Mhm.
which was like a black version of The Odd Couple. Who was in that? The guy from Barney Miller. I can't think of it. I'll think, but I scored. New Odd Couple was probably my first show that I was like the composer to do all the episodes.
Steve Landisberg.
No, it wasn't him. It
wasn't Hal Linden.
No.
It wasn't Glass.
Yes, it was Ron Glass.
Yeah, Ron Glass.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ron Glass was in it. I mean, you could look it up, you'd see, but that was my first like full-time show. I did a drama like pilot called Feel the Heat. I did some Laverne and Shirley stuff.
So let's stop here for a second, because here you're segueing into like a whole different deal,
Right.
From coordinating music to composing. Now you've been writing music for a long time, but
Right.
actually doing a score.
Right.
What prepared you?
Oh, I was studying. Yeah. Well, so first of all, I went to all kinds of scoring dates. I even went to scoring dates with James Horner doing 48 hours because I was on the lot. Like I was.
It's what you wanted to do now.
At that point, I really wanted to do that. So
I see.
And there was a really well-known mixer, Danny Wallen, who ran the scoring stage at Paramount. I used to, we got along great. And of course I supervised sessions that he recorded, but he'd invite me to these big movie dates. So I saw James Horner there. I'm trying to think of some other composers, but I saw some really big scoring dates on big movies, and it was incredibly inspiring to see, 60 players in there or something. It's like, I want to do that. And I was studying like crazy. I was studying orchestration. I was studying scores on my own.
I was going to say, did you study conducting?
Like, I studied conducting for 10 or 12 years.
Uh-huh.
So I studied conducting. I studied orchestrating. I did some I think composing, you kind of hear it. Like I studied some with Walter Scharf, who's a pretty well-known film composer teacher, but I think I really got the craft of orchestrating and stuff more than I studied quote unquote composing or how to write a melody. I don't know how you teach somebody how to write a melody, really.
Right.
So I did a lot of, I worked really hard on that stuff to kind of be ready. Because in those days, you just go on a live scoring day. I had to conduct, the first time I had to conduct a big group.
How old were you when that was happening?
I mean, early 20s. I mean, not the first
Wow.
year, probably 23, 24.
Wow.
I almost blacked out, honestly, the first time I had to conduct. And I had a woodwind player. So I'm not going to, there was a woodwind player who was married to a cellist. It was this very beautiful, this very gorgeous woman. And she was really nice and supportive. And he started to razz me during the date. So he was really giving me a hard time because they knew, look, I'm 23, 24. I'm nervous. I'm sure they can tell. I mean, the score came out well and they liked, the producers liked it, but I was very nervous. So he was really giving me a hard time. It was like he was hazing me on the date. And she kept trying to defend me. They got divorced 2 years after that. But, I never hired that guy again. And I ended up doing 45 series and 30 movies.
Hello.
I never hired that guy again. And I'm not a vindictive person, but it's okay, you fucked with me when I was getting my shot, I never forgot it. Isn't that funny?
It's the way life is.
Yeah. I would never hire him. He would come up and go, no, I want him. So, but eventually I loved conducting and I studied and I felt comfortable.
So how did that side of your career take off?
So through Gary Marshall and through that whole job, there was this producer, Tom Miller. Well, there was a company, Miller, Milkus, Boyette. So they co-produced Mork and Mindy, Happy Days. I mean, Tom Miller is one of the creators of Happy Days. I mean, he's phenomenally successful. They also had some great movies, Silver Streak, with Gene Wilder, Richard Pryor.
Love that movie.
Foul Play with Chevy Chase, Goldie Hawn.
Fantastic.
I mean, everything they did turned to gold, basically. So they already owned parts of all these. They were partners with Gary. Then they went off and started their own dynasty at Lorimar, and then it turned to Warner Brothers. So that was around 84. So basically, I stopped working my regular gig around 83 at Paramount, something like that. And then 83,
Your
84.
your regular gig? What's your
Well, I'm
regular-
saying because I was on the lot doing shows. So I was music coordinator and then I was even scoring. I probably still had that job at one point before I stopped. Like, I don't remember the timing, but I was around Paramount all the time doing the shows, coordinating, scoring. And so then Miller Boyette started this other set of shows that ended up being crazy popular, you know. So they actually went to me to write a theme for the show Perfect Strangers. And I wasn't, so I wrote that theme with
Can
a
you
guy
give
named
us a
Jesse.
little taste of that?
Yeah. So it started with the keyboard thing. It was like, we had a harmonica player. So it was like, sometimes the world looks perfect, nothing to rearrange. So it was this kind of keyboard. And the chorus was standing tall on the wings of my dream, rise and fall on the wings of my dream. Through the rain and thunder, the wind and haze, I'm bound for better days. So, and all this.
But was that your first main title?
Well, no. Well, it was the first one that was really successful and something that went 200 episodes or something. Because I'd done pilots, and so I wrote that with Jesse Frederick, who was, he was a singer-songwriter, good songwriter. And so it ended up, it was kind of on spec because I had to approve it, but definitely had the inside track because I'd worked with those guys and knew them. And they loved it. And every one of their songs, they had very formulaic shows, just like Gary did, but it was all about, Gary described it as a recess, because even though you get all this critical shit, he's like, people need to unwind, people need to like have fun and, turn off from all their real life sometimes, and just escape. It was kind of about escapism. So they wanted all the things to be very aspirational, very positive. And they had budgets. I mean, we had big string groups come in, like on Perfect Strangers and Step by Step, Family Matters, a lot of these shows. And they're really loyal. So once that clicked, and that was it, like they wanted Jesse and I to do everything that they did. And that turned into like a dynasty, like TGIF was a Friday night. They had a whole block of shows on Friday night and then Tuesday nights. I think at one point we had 6 series on at the same time.
Wow.
So because these shows lasted, I want to say Perfect Strangers was 8 years. I think Full House was 9 years. Family Matters was 10 years. Step by Step was 8 years.
Wow.
And
you were busy.
We were really busy. So Jesse and I formed like this partnership during that time, and we were doing a ton of these shows and themes, and they just kind of exploded. And we were scoring a lot of them too. We did all of Full House, like some of the shows later on, other people do some of the week to week stuff, but all of the shows, Tom and Bob wanted us to start and score all of them, get them going, get them up and going. So that was kind of that era, mid 80s till early 90s. We were just turning them out. And a part of me, I knew I could do movies and do more serious scoring. So a part of me got a little burned out doing it, but I knew it was like smart. Like it was just riding that wave, it was like getting big series and something that was really
get them
happening.
while you can.
Yeah. And so we had this great partnership during that time. But then I was really looking at other avenues to try to branch out.
To do.
I really wanted to score movies, but I wanted to do everything's really shifted in the business now. There's incredible television series now, like in all the platforms.
Oh my God. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's better than, in general, probably better than movies, like a lot of the best actors.
Oh yeah.
But back then, like it was really elite to do movies, right?
Yes.
And a lot of the network television stuff was, even dramas were pretty formulaic, and some still are, but I really wanted to do movies, and I really wanted to branch out. I wanted to do my own stuff. I wanted to score my own things on my own more. And so I think I signed with the Gorfain Schwartz agency. It was a great agency. And I got my first, it's not my first feature because I had done one before with Jesse, but I got my first really indie feature on my own in 1993, which was called Nature of the Beast, which ended up being a New Line. It was with Lance Henriksen, Eric Roberts.
Good friend of mine, Eric.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll
Eric
know.
and
So we
Liza,
did
love
that.
them.
It
Yeah.
actually did really, really well. I think in those days, there's still a lot of like video and like all these other revenue sources, like
Mhm.
people rented movies and they television, like it did really well for a lower budget movie. And that kind of started me. And Stuffy Walden, I mentioned, has been a great friend of mine since the late 70s.
Wow.
He was starting, he did 30 something in
Mhm.
88 or 87, I think that started. And I remember he played me the music he was writing for the pilot and was running stuff by me. I mean, we were just really good friends and his career just took off like crazy. And so Snuffy also really wanted me to come in and either write some stuff with him or score some of the shows he was doing themes for, because he really needed help and trusted me. So that was kind of a nice thing. So I did Nature of the Beast. Then he had me come in and score like every other episode of Early Edition, the show with Kyle Chandler,
Mhm.
which ran for quite a few years. So I did stuff. He did the pilot, wrote the theme, but he didn't really score hardly any of them. I think I just scored every other one. And Joseph Williams, actually John Williams' son, scored
Mhm.
every other one for a while. So I started doing dramas through Snuffy, and that really helped me. And I did Providence on NBC, which was on, you saw, and quite a few of those. And I was starting to do movies as well. So I kind of had this indie movie thing going. I was doing dramas on television, and I just got out of sitcoms. I didn't want to do sitcoms anymore. Like it was great. I was like, it was kind of like, okay, that was a big, great success.
Mhm.
But I kind of got out of it. And Jesse and I are still good friends, but we kind of went our own way. And I was doing my own movie stuff and working with Snuffy, or sometimes on shows where he would start, I would take over depending on what it was. So I was busy. I was really busy, and working with some bands too. So,
How did the band, what bands were you,
well, I was in a band. So I was in a band called Bang Bang in 84 and 85. This is another whole.
I watched the video as you
Okay.
suggest that I do. And I laughed so hard. Cindy
Yeah.
Beaton's boyfriend has a video from the 80s that was a hit. But it reminded me a lot of like Boy George. It kind of had that vibe.
Right. So the
Yeah.
lead singer, Julian Raymond, who I still work with all the time. And yeah, we had makeup and crazy 80s
Oh
hair,
God,
and
the
we were signed to
hair.
Epic, and we had some energy going for a while, and we had a
Mhm.
kind of a good record deal and stuff. I mean, it never went over the hump, but so Julian ended up being a really successful producer, songwriter. He had multi-platinum bands like Fastball, like he's with Big Machine Records now. He's produced like #1 hits. He's worked with a ton of bands. So and Bang Bang, I ended up co-producing the record. So I was really into production playing. I co-produced with Bob Margouleff, if you know who that is. He was one of the original Moog. Like he had this Moog called Tonto with Stevie Wonder. So he produced Stevie Wonder records. I think like Intervisions and a bunch of records.
Oh, like one of my favorite albums
Yeah.
of all
So
times. Yeah.
I ended up co-producing with him. But Julie and I have been friends ever since, like really close. That's what, 36 years ago, 37 years ago.
Wow.
So he wanted me to come in and do all the stuff he did
Mhm.
as doing string arrangements. So I worked with a lot of artists through him. And like the band Fastball, they had a song called Away, which was a huge hit. And I worked all kinds of different artists. He was a
You
different
mentioned
record.
the Brian Setzer Orchestra.
Yeah, so Brian
as well, right?
Setzer.
Mhm.
So kind of through doing all that, then some artists knew of me. So I knew Brian Setzer's manager. So they hired me to write arrangements for Brian Setzer's big band, both for records and some live stuff. I did a Rob Zombie record, the first time he ever had strings on a record, because he knew this movie I did called Jeepers Creepers, where we had big orchestra, and he was starting to do his own horror movies as a director. I worked with Motley Crue. Tommy Lee was a fan. So I had these weird things, like even though I wasn't really a metal.
Cheap Trick. You talked about Cheap
I've done a
Trick.
lot of stuff with Cheap Trick. So I worked on records with them, but I did some really cool stuff with them even more recently, where I did arrangements of the Dream Police record for orchestra, and we performed them live, like in different cities, like Milwaukee. We did a bunch of dates, and I conducted, and we had the orchestra, and I wore this like police outfit from the Dream Police record, with a English bobby cap and a long tails, and that was great. And we also did the Beatles Sgt. Pepper's record, beginning to end. So I got to I got all the original tracks from Sgt. Pepper's record, every individual track that they did. And I recreated the whole Sgt. Pepper's record just like they did. I did, all the same vocals, all the parts, and we performed it. We performed,
How?
like, what are some of we performed at some of the Chicago Symphony at Ravinia in Chicago. We did the Greek Theater. We did the Dream Police show
Wow.
at the Greek. All over, in Florida. I haven't worked on the records. I've done arrangements. I've worked with a lot of different artists, but Cheap Trick, I'm really friendly with those guys and stay in touch. And, I love the band. I love the band when they came out. Live at Budokan is an amazing record. And so I got to be on stage with them doing, I Want You to Want Me and Surrender and their hits, and
so fabulous
doing arrangements, and Sgt. Pepper's record, which they killed. So I've kind of always had this foot in that door. I mean, I've definitely done more scoring than that stuff, but I have sort of continuously done that over the years. So, and I like that. I like being part of bands, or even though I've been playing on some records and still doing it. I mean, we're still doing it.
Crystal's on here and she says to say hi and she misses you.
Hi.
So have you played music since the pandemic? Have you played with other players?
Not live. I mean, the studios I mentioned, but you know what? It's just because it's not the main thing I do. And we were doing those gigs at Babylon Social Club with Snuffy and all, it just was kind of weird for me because it's not, I was working, I was scoring, and it was easier to score stuff than to do live stuff.
Right.
So unfortunately, that part of what I was doing is went to the back burner for sure. Kind of went to, I want to do it. I want to play live, but it just kind of went to pause mode. So hopefully, I play sometimes with Teresa James and Terry and their
love
band
them
too, who are great. And they like me to play with them. So I think as this year comes on, I'll do some stuff with them. I see that as being the next live stuff I do.
And so what, Bennett, looking ahead, is there something that you haven't done that you'd still liked? Because what you've accomplished, it seems like everything that you sort of set your sights on, you've done. Is there something else that you haven't yet, or an extension of something you've done?
That's a good question. I have to think about that. This movie I did, Bonded. I would love to have just more opportunities at really character-driven movies, projects. I mean, I've loved doing these music documentaries, and more in the pipeline, I think, with James Keach. I want to keep doing those. But I want to keep looking for these real character-driven movies, because I don't need to do a bunch of hit sitcom themes anymore or something like that.
Right.
I kind of did all that. It paid off to do all of it, but it's kind of more, I just want to do projects that are, I guess I do a really good horror movie, but I had features that did really well, like the Jeepers movies, #1 box office, very successful. And I would do a really good one, like Get Out or something like that, which I really like, but I don't want to focus, I don't want to do kind of low budget horror movies or something, for example. Really,
so
I wouldn't focus on that. I want to do more character driven. At this stage of
your career, Bennett, do you get gigs mostly from people that know you, that you've worked with, or is it your agent getting you the work? Or
I mean, I think it's mostly through people, at this point, I've been in the business for over 40 years. So I think almost anybody in my position gets it through your relationships over the years, mostly, but they put me up for stuff. I mean, I love my agency, and shout out to Maria Machado and Andrew Zaks, or primarily I work with Gorfain Schwartz and Mike Gorfain and Sam Schwartz. I mean, I love those guys, and they do put me up for stuff. And I, occasionally will get stuff just on a cold call, or somebody knows me or knows something I've done. But relationships are kind of the building block, just getting calls from people that I've worked with in the past. And, but you still, every job you get, you can't say, oh, well, I've worked for this person, 6 times. So this isn't my expression, but you really have to look at everything. I think like it's the first time. You really have to give that kind of effort. I feel like anytime you get something, you have to have a little sense of urgency that it's got to be great. You got to put your all into it. And I think that's why I like working on this Bonded movie, because it was really a ton of music, and it was a really dark, serious subject, and it was really tricky to get the right So I like that, you know.
Can
kind
you
of
play us? Can you play us something that
Um,
came from that, or
I
play us
might be
and play us anything you want? Give us a little taste of something.
well, I'm trying to think from that movie because it's such a dark.
Hmm.
Um, this is a harp. This is a piece with harp. Well, one thing I did, that's kind of a funny story about Bonded.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of projects where I've used vocals and used singers,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a singer. I mean, I've never been a singer. I've never sang lead on something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a theme from Bonded called the Woman in Black theme, and it's on a harp, and it goes like this. It's kind of this very hypnotic. So anyway, but what I did, I thought I did something thinking, okay, I'm going to replace this, but I did these. So the whole idea of this theme is there's this woman in black. I'm not going to give away the story, but
Mm-hmm.
she's somebody that on one hand, she's kind of beautiful and talks nicely, but there's this very, very dark side of this character. So the director wanted a piece which was kind of the light against the dark all in one piece. So I have this very pretty harp part. And let me see if I can get a harp up for a second. I might or might not be able to. No, it's not coming up right now. So anyway, I had this idea that I would have this pretty harp and I wanted these really dark, grungy vocals, like as low as possible, like doing these, like the kind of like would come in at these different times against this pretty harp. So I sat in here and I came up with these parts myself thinking, okay, I'm going to hire somebody to do this. And I stacked them up like 12, you know, I kept layering them and I sang as low as I could. I can get pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got this grunge and affected them. So and the director was, you know, pretty picky about the music. So he'd come over. And sometimes we did Zoom, but he'd come over and I play him this piece and he just leapt up in the air and goes, "Oh my God, that's incredible."
Wow.
And I started explaining to him, I go, "Well, look, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to get singers." He goes, "No, what are you talking about?" He said, "It's incredible. That's my favorite thing. The vocals are." So I am now like a vocalist throughout this movie and all these scenes.
How
And
fabulous.
we ended up, that's definitely it's not my vocal debut because sometimes I've sing little background parts, but I mean, it's really this prominent part with this dark against the light and this woman in black theme. So it was really funny. So it just ended up being in the movie and everybody seemed to like, it's kind of a weird part. Like it just doesn't sound like anything else, if that makes sense. It's kind of a unique sound. So that was kind of a funny thing. So there's some kind of cool things that came out of it. It's a kind of score because it's so dark. It's it's hard to really plank out the score other than, you know, something like that.
So like when you're doing horror, like for Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little taste of that?
Oh my God. Do
you remember anything?
I don't think I can. It's really hard to play on it. I don't have to play on keyboard, but what I did on that one, which was kind of cool. I had really good budgets on those movies, partly because it was a different era. I think horror movies now, like it's very hard to get a good budget where you can have like 80-piece orchestra and, you know, stuff like that. I don't think it's very common now, but I did a sampling session with 50 string players before I even did the score. And I think you know, as I told you, I'd studied a lot of classical scores and I studied a lot of, for that movie, I researched a lot of modern classical, really dark music, like from World War II. And there's a piece called Threnody to the Victims of Hiroshima. It's a pretty famous piece by Penderecki. So I studied a lot of that kind of music. And there's a guy named Nono, who's this Italian composer, nobody would know, but he wrote all this like really dark brass, turbulent music about war-torn Europe. So I kind of immersed myself in classical music. And I just kind of tried to come up with a lot of unique string stuff that was really kind of weird. And I worked with a guy named Mark Menzies, who was a great, he's actually, I don't know if he still is, but he's a professor at Cal Arts. And he was into all these weird string techniques, and you'd put thimbles on the strings and alligator clips and create all these weird sounds. And bends. And so we did a whole sampling session of that. And one of the most amazing things I ever did, I did a sampling session at my studio on a prepared piano. Prepared piano is when you like change a piano and you maybe bow it with, fishing line or a Super Bowl. There was a guy who was unbelievable. He was a social anarchist. He was like off the grid. He was a genius. I can't even think of his name, and maybe it'll come to me, but I had him come in and he made the piano moan, sound like a human voice.
Wow.
So I kind of like created this whole library, and it was sort of at a time where you could use samples, because it was like the first one I think was 2001. So it was sort of like we were already using samplers and, commonly. And so that one was totally different. So I kind of came up with this whole weird library, and, people tell me they're like, that score is like really terrified them, like literally viscerally. Like Snuffy's kid heard it when he was like, he wasn't a little kid, he was a teenager or something, and got really scared. I mean, one of my daughters heard me working. So I was on TV, because it was on television all the time. Like it really did like very well. And like, she was scared out of her mind, like.
Do you ever creep yourself out when you're writing this music?
I mean, it's funny because I don't really feel like I have this really dark life or anything, or really tortured, background or anything, but obviously it's in there somewhere, right? Like, I just like sound, and I like being, kind of like a character in the movie, and just finding what
I love that.
I that's kind of like in my original bio on the website, which is down now, that I'm working on, but I kind of talk about that. I'm not really that, it hasn't evolved. I'm not that guy that does the same thing and stays in the same genre.
Right.
And which is sometimes a good way to build a career, because everybody knows you as the guy that does this, or the woman that does this, or something. Like, I've kind of like stepping in these different genres. And so Jeepers was really great to have that kind of budget and to do all this great sampling and come up with a library that was really unique for that movie, and to be really scary. Like, it was, and had incredible players. We did it in LA. It was like kind of I think John Williams had done a date the week before with the same engineer and the same players, essentially. I mean, we really had that level. So to conduct that was really pretty amazing. I mean,
sounds fabulous.
Definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Sounds like a good Halloween movie for me to dip into.
Even, and there's soundtracks out and stuff, like you can, listen to some of it or see some of it. But Jeepers 1 especially, it was actually very well reviewed, like Kevin Turan and the LA Times, like for a horror movie. It was a kind of a very slow building movie. I think they said one of the scariest movies he's ever seen. And,
I've never seen it. I definitely am going to be watching it now.
Yeah. I mean, to me, of course, I knew the movie, so it didn't affect me that way, because I knew everything that happened. I can't really see it as a viewer.
Wait, isn't the lead, I know him.
Justin Long.
Oh God, Justin Long.
Yeah, it was Justin Long, and Gina Phillips was his sister. It was a brother sister. It was kind of cool. They played brothers and sisters, and they kind of had, they kind of played off their relationships, which was kind of nice, like a typical sibling rivalry that loved each other. There's a little brother sister thing in there. And cool. Jonathan Breck played the creeper, and he ended up having this whole career of going to Comic-Con and stuff like that. And he's a super nice guy, like the nicest, like not dark guy you'd ever want to meet. And yeah, that's another one of those weird things. Like, I never expected, I got a call from Sam Schwartz, from Gorfaine Schwartz, the day after it came out, or the weekend. He goes, "Congratulations, you have the #1 movie in the country."
Wow.
I'm like, what? Really?
Wow.
Like,
and 18+ BMI awards you've won. You've had.
Yeah. A lot of that's for the television series, for themes. I mean, so Full House was revived as Fuller House on Netflix, which just ended, I think, a year and a half ago. In fact, the show was still going when I had my injury. I did and it was a funny thing, because we did our theme, the same original theme, with Carly Rae Jepsen. We had a charting single with it.
Wow. And
I was had really mixed feelings about it, because initially I said, like, I don't want to do I haven't done a sitcom in 20 years, because they really wanted to bring Jesse and I back to do the show, and Warner's did, and Bob Boyette and Tom Miller really did. And at first I wouldn't do it, for a couple of months. I'm like, I don't know, it just feels weird to go back. But then everybody said, come on, you got to do it. It's just, so I did it. And I'm glad I did, because the girls who were kids on the shows, like Candace Cameron Bure and Andrea Barber, Jodie Sweetin, they played the girls. They were the main, they were drove the show. Now, even though Stamos and SAG, all those guys are in it still.
Right.
They really drove the show, and they were like fantastic to work with. And I was like,
nice.
It was really cool to see them grow up. And they, Andrea wrote an episode, Candace directed, I think multiple episodes, Jodie directed. Candace did a big song and dance thing. Jodie sang a lot of songs, which we did with her, and wrote a lot of songs. And, I know those guys. I mean, I know Bob Saget and Stamos, Dave Coulier, because we were all young doing the show and would hang out back then.
Did you ever play music with John Stamos?
Yeah, well, he did stuff. Well, first of all, on the original Full House, he sang, songs. So, and I produced a lot of that. And in fact, John came when Cheap Trick was in town, after we did all that stuff, just before the pandemic. Like my wife and I and him and his nephew went to Cheap Trick together, and saw the concert, because he was a big fan of theirs. And he, he loves bands. I mean, he's always around bands, always around music. So, we unlike most shows I do, we all had a connection with that cast. We all kind of hung out at times. And so it was kind of really nice in that way. It was like a homecoming of everybody. So I'm glad I ended up doing it in the end. And it went 5 seasons on Netflix, which is a
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So we even won like 3 BMI awards for that, because I think Netflix doesn't really publicly release their numbers.
Right.
But the BMI awards only went to like the top 4 or 5 shows on all of Netflix. So, they have tons of a big platform there. So it did very, very well. And Netflix kind of used it at the time to sort of expand. They were doing all these great shows like House of Cards and very, critically acclaimed stuff, but they actually wanted to broaden their platform.
Right.
And we did a show, we did the main title in Japanese. They did an episode in Japan, which was really expensive. We brought in a singer to sing in Japanese, and they got a bunch of subscribers supposedly in Japan from that. Like, there's definitely a strategy, I think. And
oh God, to everything they do, there's a strategy.
Yeah. And I think they definitely got new subscribers from having the show on the platform. So I was glad I did it, because I reconnected with everybody, and it was one of those just fun things. Everybody's super nice, and
well, Bennett, you are super nice, and I'm so glad that after a year and a half, we finally got to sit down and do this. Even I feel like we're in the same room, even though we're not.
Yeah.
And I really look forward to everything you've got coming in the future. And I am very inspired, and it's a great reminder how important gratitude is, and to stay in what you can do rather than in what you can't. And you're a great example of that.
You.
And
it's just kind of how I feel. I mean, it's not, people say, well, how can you do, it's like, I guess I'm kind of just wired like that, because I love the things that I do, and I just wanted to do them. So if that makes sense, like, it's just where my mind kind of went. It wasn't like I had to ward off, and it was kind of a cool challenge to come back. Like, of course, you would never choose for something like that to happen, but since it did happen, acceptance is a big thing too, I think.
Absolutely.
Like acceptance. And then it was almost, there was a part of it that was like a cool challenge, and almost like a little bit fun. Like, okay, let's see what I can do in the next month. Let's see what I can do, with my therapist, my doctors, with my friends, with my musical people. Like, there's a part of it that's weirdly rewarding too, to come back. Like, I think it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger or something, whatever.
All of that. Absolutely.
So I didn't really have to make a big conscious effort to be brave or something. It's just kind of how I felt about it,
Well, it's kind of who you are. That's just kind of who you are.
Yeah. So
thank you so much for doing this, Bennett. I look forward to a future day where I can come see you play live.
Please do. Yes. I'm sure we will the next year, at least with Teresa. So
look forward to
come and say hi.
I absolutely will. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Take good care. My pleasure. Bye-bye.